Thank you, thank you. So, how many people don't know me? Okay, that's good. I get very excited about that too. All right, so starting with TV staffing and development, I'm going to ask you guys some questions. So how many people have been through a TV staffing season? Okay, I like this. All right, so this is good. All right, so I'm going to be teaching you tools that are going to help you to go through a TV staffing season. So my goals today are going to be to prepare you for staffing and development and to teach you new perspective on story and to discuss the writing process for TV spec and pilot script and to help you be an active protagonist in your life and your career. So the theme of today in this event really is all about the idea of you guys learning how to be active in your career. And what I'm going to say, my next book that's coming out, Change Your Story, Change Your Life, A Path to Your Success, is all about the idea, ironically, goes right in with the theme because it's about the idea of after your life takes a turn for the negative, how do you become an active hero in your own story? And that's what everything goes into, so we will definitely hit on some of those points today because I'm going to tell you in this business, if you are not active, and when I say active, I mean daily taking actions toward your goal, that's what you need to do, and that's everything that we're going to go into. The idea of building a strategy for your career. That's really what I want to teach you guys today because I'm going to tell you doing what I do, and I've done it for 21 years now, and doing what I do, there's nothing I love more than when I get the email and someone tells me they've been staffed, or when I get the email and someone tells me that they sold their pilot. And when I get the email and people say, oh, I want to be I just had number 20 of my clients sell a pilot, and then I get people saying, I want to be number 21. That excites me. That's the type of attitude that I want you guys to have, is the attitude of why not me? So thematically, there really is one thing that I want you to think about in terms of staffing and development. And the one thing that I'm going to have you think about through all these three areas is your emotional truth. So your emotional truth is the key to what is going to make you a successful working writer. And your ability to access your emotional well in the story as well as in the room is going to determine your success. So you may have a phenomenal portfolio, and how many people think they have a phenomenal portfolio? Okay, good. I like it, I like it. So you may have a phenomenal portfolio. Now, what it's down to is building and making relationships. So the idea is once you have your calling card, your writing portfolio is everything. So if you have one or two scripts that hit it out of the ballpark, I like people to have 4 scripts in their writing portfolio. I like to have one current script that's 2 years old, no more than 2 years old. And then I like for there to be either a second spec or 3 originals. And the originals could be 2 pilots in a feature. It could be a 1-act. So I want you guys today is going to be all about taking it all in and figuring out this is how I'm going to build my strategy to have a successful staffing and development season. And the emotional truth when you're in your meetings and your goals, I want you to think about your emotional truth as well, because in the meetings in particular, I can't tell you how many showrunners have said to me that the key to when they're interviewing 25 people is the story. The story that the person shares with them is what makes them remember the person. So that is what I'm actually going to do. I haven't even told you, Karen. I'm actually going to do a raffle today too. So we're going to get to an exercise called Logline for Your Life. How many people have done this with me? Okay, good. So you have the heads up. You're ahead a little bit there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all of you, we'll probably take like a 10-minute break, even though I have a lot of information to get through, and I hope I'll get through all of it. I'm going to have all you guys write a logline for your life as a way to start identifying your story that you can share in meetings. And then everyone who turns in a logline, I'm going to do a raffle, and I'm going to give a pitch consult worth $350, where we'll go over 3 pitches for your writing portfolio for your scripts, and we're also going to go over your personal pitch for you in a meeting. So that is, and I'm going to announce the winner of that on my business Facebook page. So my business Facebook page is Jen Gristanti Consultancy. Unfortunately, on my personal page, I have 5,000 friends. So you hit your limit where you can't have any more, which is such a difficult thing. But I have shifted I do all my story tips and writing tips on my business page. So I will announce it, I'll probably announce it on both pages, but I will announce it on my business page. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about perspective on story, TV staffing, TV development, tips on writing, and setting goals. And I'll start with who am I? All right, some of you don't know. So, I am a story career consultant at Jen Gristanti Consultancy, Inc. I'm a writing instructor for Writers on the Verge at NBC. Have one of our writers on the verge back there. And I've been there for 5 years. I was just signed on for 2 years. I love being a part of the NBC program. And I am a blogger for the Huffington Post, and I am an author of the book Storyline, Finding Gold in Your Life Story, which is all about adding fiction to your truth, which is a large part of what makes the difference between a working writer and a non-working writer. And my new book coming up, Change Your Story, Change Your Life. And then my TV book that seems to, I have a lot of people who tell me they don't write a script without it, is TV Writing Toolkit. And this came to be as a result of my 5 top-selling workbooks that I was encouraged to by the writer's store to put into a book. And I'm going to have this on sale at a discounted price after class, as well as a workbook for this class that will really embody most of what we discussed today. So I don't want people to get frantic like, oh my God, I got to write everything down. Just absorb the information and know that if you need the information afterwards, there will be ways for you to get it. My history, so I started as Aaron Spelling's assistant in 1992. Aaron was my mentor for the next 12 years. I climbed the ladder in current programming and spelling, and I'm going to tell you, just as you are all going to face, because I'm very confident that you're going to be working writers, in climbing the ladder, that was the hardest thing I have ever done in my career. And so this is why I'm all about you are the active hero in your story, and there are going to be massive hurdles in your way to achieving your goal, but you can achieve your goal. So at Spelling, I rose through the ranks over the 12 years and eventually ran current programming and covered all the shows, including 90210, Melrose Place, Charm, Seventh Heaven. At CBS Paramount, I was promoted to Vice President of Current Programming, where I covered medium numbers, NCIS, 4400, and Girlfriends. And then, when my contract was not picked up, essentially after 15 years with 2 sister companies, I started my own company 5 years ago. So you'll hear a little bit more about that, and you'll definitely see how my personal my two pivotal personal moments in my life. One, which was a long relationship that ended in a short marriage and essentially represented the death of the fairy tale. And the second was losing a job after 15 years with two sister companies and having to redefine my path. Those two pivotal moments in my life are what have sold all of my books. They're the basis for my blogs in the Huffington Post, and they're the basis for my speaking. So this is a part of my brand, because this is a part of what I've experienced, and it's part of what connects me to people. So I want you guys to start digging into your well and recognizing it's not so hard to come up and say, hey, guess what? I lost my job after 15 years, and I went through a divorce, and the marriage failed, and that's okay, because it really is about detaching from your story and be able to utilize your story from a place of fiction in your writing. And that is what will make the difference between you getting staffed and not getting staffed. Story of my company. So I opened my company in the middle of the writer's strike. So I'm going to launch a company that's a writer's consultancy where writers are going to pay me money in the middle of the writer's strike. Okay, so it was January 2008. I sent my website out to 900 people, essentially removing my name from the corporate job list. And I got 175 emails back the first day and 20 meetings booked the first week. And what I saw was the one thing I was known for as an executive was my development notes. So what I did was I built a business around my strength. I built a business around the idea of I love writers, and I love contributing to helping, what's the word I'm looking for? I love contributing to the path of a writer becoming successful. And because I staffed over 15 shows in prime time when I was at Spelling and CBS Paramount, I got to see firsthand what the staffing experience is like. And what I can tell you, I'm going to give you some insider information. So I want you to know this when you go into your meetings. We want the meeting to work every bit as much as you want the meeting to work. So I can say to you, don't be nervous, this and that, and I know you're still going to be nervous. But I think when you can prepare for your meetings and go in with intention, and go in with this is what I want to achieve during this meeting, and know in your mind that if you have some sense of where you want to go with the meeting, it does help eliminate nerves. One thing in my meetings, I often met with writers. I would say most people on average, the writing meeting could be anywhere from 20 minutes. My meetings are mostly 1 hour. And during that hour, a large part of what I was trying to do was to discover how accessible the writer is to their well. So someone could say to me, oh, I had a brother commit suicide. So I think, okay, that's interesting in the sense that you know what loss is. You know what deep pain is. Do you know how to transfer that into your writing? So it's figuring out, just because you have a story, can you access that story? Can you really go deep into what it was that happened and be able to explore that in your writing? And again, it's from a place of emotional truth. It's not from an autobiographical place. The autobiographical place where that gets writers really stuck is they get stuck to the idea of, well, that didn't happen in the story. And dramatic structure doesn't follow what your life structure is. So it's learning, how do I put the emotional truth in dramatic structure in my characters so that my voice is coming out in my scripts. And when as an executive, every staffing season, I probably had 300 scripts behind me. I would say I met with, on average, 175 writers a year. And it really is how, and I would say I staffed probably 15 of those writers a year. So, you know, it is a numbers game, and you have to look at that not as a downer, but as a, what do I need to do to make myself stand out? So it's really learning, as I've mentioned, it's not just selling the story of your script, it's selling the story of your life, so that we know if I put you in a room with somebody who's going to be around you 10 hours a day, that you have something to draw from. So you don't want to miss an opportunity when you're in these meetings, which is why I have you do exercises like Logline for your life, so that you can start to mine the gold from within and really look at what stories do I have in my life that are going to connect me to my audience, which is the person you're meeting with. And that's the type of question. That's the type of strategy that you want to go in with. So these are the stats of my company at this point in time. I've worked with over 500 writers in TV, film, and novels, 375 pilots I've worked with writers on developing, 20 have sold, 2 have gone to series, 40 people have staffed, actually 41, I heard of someone today. So, and 85 have placed in competitions. Now, the relevance of these numbers is just to say to you that if this is something that you want, these numbers represent that it's happening. So it is, I've had people in these rooms who are part of those statistics. And so I want you guys to look at those stats and say, okay, I'm going to be that number next. Or that could happen to me. If that happened to that person, and 3 years ago they were in this room, why can't it happen to me? And I really want you to learn to take that attitude. My book, Storyline, Finding Gold in Your Life Story, 2 Pivotal Life Moments. The message of the book is go deep inside yourself and mine your gold. Explore your caves without fear. Detach from your ego and connect to your spirit, and believe in the power of you. So the relevance of this perspective is I'm going to give you an insider point of view, the studio executive perspective on story, personal connect, so it's really understanding what do you have in your life. Like, for example, I staffed a show called Kingpin, okay, that David Miller had written, God rest his soul. And in it, David had said to me, all right, when we're staffing for this show, I want to get people who know what this world is. And this is a drug world. And so in your writer meetings, I need you to pull out of people, do they have any experience with the drug world? Do they have any experience with the legal world in connection with the drug world? Do they have any uncle who was in jail for doing drugs? Have they been in trouble with the law doing drugs? He was like, everything counts, and I don't want people to hold back. I want people to know that this is what is going to sell them as a writer. So I want you guys to start thinking about that in terms of your personal story. And then let's see. Okay, so my philosophy, so honestly, these are story points that if you can start to absorb these story points, I'm going to hit these again and again and again, and these will make a difference in your writing. And the story points are a trigger incident, a dilemma, a goal, obstacles building to your all is lost moment, and resolution. And actually part of obstacles building to your all is lost moment is stakes. So with your trigger incident, you want to think of something that happens that pushes your central character into a corner to where they have to make a choice. And that's where you create empathy. So empathy is the key to your success of your story. I would say some of the biggest mistakes made by writers, there are 2 common mistakes made by writers. And the first would be, in my experience, the first is there's not enough empathy created for the central character at the beginning. So you don't have the rooting interest. And when you think about that, you want to think about things like Michael Haig gave an incredible definition of story begins when an unfortunate situation is forced upon, an undeserved situation is forced upon the central character. And then your idea is how do you, so essentially what you're doing is you're throwing your central character out of balance. And the whole journey of your story is to bring their life back into balance. So if you have a perfect character with a perfect life who doesn't go through a great loss at the beginning, then we're not rooting for the achievement of the goal. And you can have characters that we don't like necessarily, but we do need to empathize with them. So that is a big key. And then the second common mistake that I really want you to think about, and I'm going to tell you I was on an Oscar-nominated panel, and this was a mistake that was made in the scripts. It was the year of Hugo and Moneyball. And the mistake that was made was there was no external stakes arc in the script. So to build an external stakes arc, you really want to think about how am I building and escalating the stakes in my script. So for every obstacle that your central character hits in each act, you should have a reminder of the stakes. And the stakes are, what is the worst that can happen if the goal is not achieved? So I want you to really go into your script and ask yourself these questions, like, do I have this in my story? And things I look for in scripts, I look for strong concept, complex central character. I'm all about characters that have flaws. I'm all about the Don Drapers and you know, the Walt from Breaking Bad and Homeland, and really going in both Claire Danes' character and the other character, what's his name, the lead of Homeland, both their characters. Like, I'm really about the idea of looking into the flawed character, because that's who we connect with. We connect with a person who we care about, who isn't perfect. How many people have seen Luther? Okay, you know me, you know Luther, I think, is probably one of the best first hours of TV ever done. You must watch Luther. So Luther is with Idris Elba. It is spectacular. It's a BBC show. You can get it on iTunes, Netflix. You can go to a website called www.casttv.com. Oh, it's coming back September. Yeah. Yay! Okay, Luther lovers know that this show is like. So yes, this Luther's character. Now the fascinating thing is with Luther in the opening, you essentially have, you know, the hook of the series is you have a cop with anger issues, but his anger issues are what make him a great cop. Yet they also create havoc in his personal life. So you see him do, the opening is beyond brilliant, and I'll talk about it when we go to openings, and you see his wound. So that in your opening, you really want to have a sense of what is the wound that is driving your central character, and what is the flaw that gets in the way. So I want you to think in terms of that. And then if you're writing a pilot, okay, so things I look for, I'll continue on. Obstacles, stakes, active central character. Now this is another big area that writers miss, is they have a reactive central character. They don't have a central character who is driving the action. And Glenn Mazzara said in one of my podcasts, he was the showrunner on The Walking Dead last year, he said, I just read 70 pilots for The Walking Dead staffing, and he said, you want to know what the biggest mistake writers are making is? And I said, no, what is the biggest mistake? And he said, the biggest mistake is they're not choosing Tony Soprano or Jack Bauer to drive the action. They're choosing the sidekick of Tony Soprano or Jack Bauer. So the right character isn't driving the action. So that's something that I want you to think about with your future pilots, and then setup of the series is a very big thing too. And like what I recommend that you guys do is, number one, read as many pilot scripts as you can that get picked up. Number two, really study pilots. Really look at the setup of the pilot and look at the setup of the series. And very often, you'll have a series arc that bleeds into a pilot arc, and your series arc will bookend your pilot, and that's where you'll get all the juice to continue on for the season. And that is definitely a formula that I recommend using in the writing of your pilots. Okay, so staffing. How many people have any idea about like when staffing is? Okay, so, all right, so staffing, February to June. I started as an executive reading for shows in February. I would say March is probably more likely for the mainstream, but I would start reading writers in February as a way to get ahead of the game. And then I would read writers through June. Now you have the upfronts in mid-May, so usually everybody has their staff in place by the beginning of May. So everybody, but what you got to remember across town is you probably have 5 shows who have the same writers in place. So you have to, so that's where you guys get the extension, because a lot of those writers are going to fall through because there are too many shows that want them. And so that's where it bleeds into June, because everybody's scrambling to figure out how to get the best writers on their shows after losing some of their original choices. Cable is year-round staffing, and so that I want people to think about too, because cable really is stronger than ever right now. I mean, that's a gift to go, okay, at least cable is year-round. I mean, that's like, oh, phew. So it's not like, oh my God, I have to have, and it's great if you do have, like I recommend in a strategy, like if you're thinking about a strategy, say for the next year. So I would look at your portfolio and I would think, how many scripts do I have in my writing portfolio now? How many are great scripts? Like how many, if you really have to have 2 scripts that hit it out of the ballpark. And then you can have 2 scripts that you get an okay read on. Maybe people don't love as much, that's okay. As long as you have 2 that people are like, oh my God, those scripts were so amazing. That's what you're gunning for. So in your mind, I want you to start thinking, okay, right now we're in June. It's June 1st. So the goal from this point forward is going to be able to create a writing portfolio that reflects what I'm saying within the next year, if you have some of it already started. Now, 4 scripts in a year is a lot. I've definitely seen writers be able to do that. But in your mind, now in my program, in Writers on the Verge, as well as my teleseminar, I have writers, in my teleseminar this year, we have like 98 people signed up from all over the world. And then we have people, we have 4 people operating at level 3, which is like a Writer on the Verge level. So they have material coming in every week. So they have to be able to write a TV spec script in 5 weeks and a TV pilot script in 5 weeks. Caitlin's one of those people. So you learn what it is to have to write scripts in that short amount of time. And what I've heard from so many of my former Writer on the Verge people who are staffed right now is that prepared them for what it is to be on a writing staff. You may have something come in where the network hates the script, and you've got to turn the script around in 3 weeks. So you have to really start learning that you are capable of this. I think my greatest joy from doing the NBC program and my teleseminar is really the idea of empowering writers to believe you can go so far beyond what you thought you were capable of doing when you're held accountable. So I want you to start thinking about that in your own strategy. So for TV staffing, things to think about: be prepared, intention, your story, your marketing points. This is another huge thing. How many people have a sense of what their marketing points are? Good. How many people want to share some of those marketing points to give the others an idea of what some marketing points are? Yes?
Well, I've worked in TV editorial for 7 years, so I know what it's like on the other end.
Right.
I know when I can read a script, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a problem because we may not be able to do this, and this piece. How are we going to present this visually?
Right.
Because we have to put something on TV. So
Right.
has a script, but if we can't shoot it, cut it, air it, it'll work.
Right. That's great. Editing is storytelling. So yes, you don't want to go out of a meeting without mentioning that you have a strong editing background. And looking at things, like I remember Glenn admitted, which I love, how many people have seen Glenn Mazzara speak? Okay, he's like a god. So if you ever have a chance to hear him speak, he's on my podcast. That's for free. That's on iTunes. I actually have 2 podcast interviews with him. He is a writer's best friend. Like, he will tell you the straight truth of what it is. And Glenn had shared a story, I believe it was in my very first seminar, that he had gone on an interview, and it was all about knowing what you have that is going to help you with the job. So he had come out here, oh God, I forget the name of the show that brought him out here, Walker, Texas Ranger, I think it might have been. But he came out here for a show. He was a hospital administrator, I believe, for 13 years, if I remember correctly. And he came out here, and after that show went down, he got an interview on ER. What do you think he forgot to bring up in the interview? So things like that, and I love that he shared that, because it was, you know, he was nervous, and he also has a great story about how nervous he was with working with Sean Ryan in the beginning before he got the job. And the thing you guys got to learn about these stories, like, how many people have listened to my Storywise podcast? Okay, so I'm excited for those of you who have not, because I've interviewed almost every top writer in TV. They are free. It's all about giving the story behind our storytellers as a way to motivate and inspire you to believe that your dream can come true. So I encourage you to listen to these podcasts and listen to these journeys of how these writers got to where they are. They will very likely inform you on how you are going to do it. And then reflection on writing. Okay, so this is a huge thing. I want you guys, so many people will think, oh my God, they're so big, they don't need to hear what I think about their writing. Showrunners do need to hear what you think about their writing. Everybody loves to hear about the effect that their writing is having on you. So when you're going into a meeting with the showrunner, make sure you do your research, find a script that he or she has written, and make sure you have a comment on it, a positive comment, on what you on what you think really works about their voice and what excites you, because your passion is going to sell. So you need to do the research that you have something to be passionate about, that it's a shared passion with them. So that is something that I highly, highly recommend. I've seen people get staffed by doing that very well. Okay, so drama specs, and you have that on the handout, so I want everyone to know there's a handout. I do have a lot of cheat sheets on here. I tried to get so you guys aren't scrambling to write everything. So the drama scripts are on here. If you don't have a handout, you can get one after class. There are a ton of drama scripts right now that are in the well. So it's really looking at, so we have Person of Interest, Homeland Justified, The Walking Dead, Boardwalk Empire, Grimm, Game of Thrones, Mad Men, Castle, The Good Wife, Hawaii Five-0, The Mentalist, NCIS LA, Once Upon a Time, Parenthood, Shameless, Suits, White Collar, Luther, Downton Abbey, House of Cards, Revenge, Scandal, Nashville, The Americans, Vampire Diaries, The Killing, Sons of Anarchy. So, great well to draw from. So what I want you to start thinking now in terms of your strategy and approach toward writing a spec is, in my emotional well, who am I identifying with in this group of shows? Who is a character who I can speak to? And, you know, Dan O'Shannon from Modern Family gave a great tip, which I loved. He said, you know what I would learn? He said, when I was staffing in the beginning, and Dan's been on Modern Family for years, and then he was on Frasier for years, and Cheers for years. He grew up on Cheers. He climbed the ladder on Cheers. And he said, what I learned was sometimes when I was going for shows, for staffing, is I would through the grapevine, I'd try to find out who was the character they hate writing toward. And then I'd write it, I'd come up with a story for that character. So that they'd be like, I have to have him in the room because he gets that character. So it's really looking for what links your persona well to any of these characters, any of these concepts, that you can bring it alive on the page. Then comedy specs, Archer, Cougar Town, Raising Hope, Louie, The League, The Middle, Mike and Molly, New Girl, Parks and Recreation, Suburgatory, Veep, Two Broke Girls, The Big C, Nurse Jackie, House of Lies, The Mindy Project, Workaholics, The Neighbors, Anger Management. So the rule of thumb for spec scripts is the show should officially be picked up for the second year. I have so many people who try to get around that because they get so excited when a new show comes on and it's been on for 3 episodes and they want to write it. I don't recommend it. I recommend knowing that the show is officially picked up for the second year before you write the show. And then of the oldies, like, you know, a lot of people may say, don't write a Mad Men now, or don't write a Dexter now, or don't write a Breaking Bad now. You know what? These are brilliant shows. So if you have a brilliant story that is current within the season of where the show is, I do recommend it. So it's really your passion is going to sell. And so you don't want to look at scripts and go, oh, those are the top 4, so therefore I want to write one of those. You want to look for what are you the most passionate about that you're going to jump out of bed and be excited to write. Okay. Emotional truth. How does your emotional truth apply to these concepts and characters? We talked about what characters do you identify with and why. So it's going to be all about, from this point forward, when you think about the strategy for your career, it's thinking about what is my end goal. What shows, I would love for you guys to think about and write down, what are 3 shows you would die to work on? And you think that your personal well connects with those shows. Because that's your end goal. Like when you look at what are my top 3 to 5 shows that I would die to work on because I believe my voice would add something, I would be an asset to that staff. And I want you guys to start thinking in those terms. The idea of that staff will be lucky to have my voice because I can bring that character to life. I can bring that concept to life because I have a well that really directly speaks with that. Now, what I did at Spelling was I would break down scripts. That's how I got ahead. I came into Aaron Spelling's office when he was 67 and I was 24. Was a really good time to come into a mentor-mentee relationship because he was in a life place where he wanted to teach somebody, and I got to be that lucky person. And I learned, you know, and how my parents had gone through a divorce after 27 years of marriage when I was in the Spelling office, and my mom gave us Tony Robbins tapes. And it really was listening to those tapes where Tony was like, you create the niche for yourself. You make things happen. And I remember being in the Spelling office and thinking, how do I go from an assistant to an executive? How do I do that? And all of a sudden I noticed that there was no one reading scripts in his direct office for all these shows that we had worked on. So I began reading scripts from 8 to 11 at night when I got home. And then he wouldn't have to call 20 people the next day to get answers because I read the scripts. And that started a routine where he would show me this is what makes story work, and this is what doesn't make story work. And then I would start doing all the notes, and then he would start calling me and saying, which I loved, because you'll find in this business, many people don't give you this courtesy. He would call me and say, can I use your notes as my notes? You know, no greater compliment, of course. I mean, I would say the normal place you're gonna find in the writer's room is you put out a great idea, everybody knocks it down, somebody else puts out that idea 4 hours later, and it's gold. So that's all part of this business. And it is, what you have to look at that is go, okay, that means I'm on the right track. With your script, so you want to get produced episodes, you want to break down the average number of pages per act. You want to take note of the act break, so you want to see how does this show treat the act break. Is it an obstacle? Is it an escalating obstacle? Does it connect back to the goal? How many of the acts end on the B story? How many of the acts end on the A story? Like, you really want to study your script, because your goal as a writer is to write what feels like a produced episode of the show. Not to write what you think a produced episode should be of the show, but what you think, what is going to be a strong produced episode in the eyes of the showrunner. How many story arcs are there? You want to think, does the show have an A, B, and C story? Is there a D story? You know, these are things that you want to think of. What do the runners look like? Do they have 3 scenes? Do they have 2 scenes? How do they elevate what is going on? I think a very, very well-written B story thematically elevates the A story. So it's something that you want to think about in the strategy of your writing as well. Okay, writer meetings. So in today's day and age, there is absolutely, and I know every executive feels this way, you should know the person you're meeting with backward and forward by the time you walk into the room. Now, I am going to say junior level agents, managers, executives are not going to be out on Google as much as senior level. So, and when you're looking at showrunners, those are more the people. But in this day and age, you have people creating a brand for themselves a lot of times before they even get on staff. So the brand begins. And same with executives, and same with everybody's writing blogs out there, everybody's doing stuff. So definitely research and look to find stuff. You can go on IMDb. I think it's like $12.95 a month, IMDb Pro, which gives you a ton of information. You go on TV Tracker, which is like $125 a month, so it's a little more costly. But that has everything. It has all the development, all the people involved on every show. And so these are resources I want you to think about. Go into your meeting with intention and confidence. Know what is happening in the business. So read Variety, read Hollywood Reporter, read Nikki Fink, and know what's going on. So if there's a lapse in the meeting, often tell people, like, I think what writers fail to recognize is that you control the meeting every bit as much as the executive. So you may be meeting with an executive who has a million things on their mind. They're putting out 10 fires on their shows. They've got some personal crisis going on at home. You can tell they're not present for your meeting. So that happens, which it very well could happen. Recognize you can turn a bad meeting into a good meeting simply by asking questions. So how long have you been doing what you're doing? Do you love it? What was your big break? What are some of the things that you've learned? People love talking about themselves. So when you break protocol, where it feels like, oh my God, I'm the person being interviewed, so therefore I can't ask questions. No, you can ask questions. And I encourage you to ask questions because that shows your interest and your passion. Your story, again, so it's going to be going into the idea of building, and I want people to be excited about this because, like, what I found in my writer meetings was that, how am I doing here? Okay, thank you. So, what I found in my writer meetings was that that people would, in getting them to reveal their personal story is I would say, so, have you ever written about that? And I would get this look of fear and then this look of joy, because you can write what you know. So again, it's just learning how to not do it in an autobiographical way, but do it in a way of emotional truth. Okay, so logline for your life. This is what I would love to do. So we'll take a 10-minute break that I would love for you guys to write, and it's going to be based, I'm not going to pull it out of a hat, it's going to be based on who I think followed the exercise and had the strongest logline. It's going to get a free pitch consult valued at $350, where we're going to go through your writing portfolio, and I'm going to hear the pitches of your scripts, and we're going to go through your personal story, and maybe even if we have time, right, help craft a creative bio for you. So I'm going to give you an example of mine. I'll put that up there so that you can have an idea of what it looks like. Is everybody okay with this? Okay, good. Because I want you guys to get excited. I want you to get with the idea of, wow, I do have so much inside me that makes me marketable. I want you to feel that value. Okay, so here's a logline from my life. After an ambitious yet overworked and disillusioned studio executive loses her job, she redefines her direction by opening her own company and helping others to realize their dreams while simultaneously realizing her own. So I want you to look at the structure, think of any dilemma, trigger incident in your life that happened that caused your life to take a turn, and what the journey looked like that followed the idea. Do you want me to keep it on this page, or do you want me to keep it on the formula page? Formula, okay. Or I could do both. I'll pull this off. So I'll go through this information. You can continue writing. If you need, you can continue writing through the end of the class and just absorb some of what I say and be on your own. And you know, this is really helping you apply what I'm teaching you. So that is, for me, the greatest reward to see things start to happen. I've had people do logline for their life and suddenly discover they had 5 more scripts to write. Yep, yep. So that's what excites me. That really excites me. Okay, so personal story arc. So a lot of people will say, oh my God, I can't really put all that in a logline. So in Change Your Story, Change Your Life, I talk about the logline as well as a personal story arc. So that's kind of like if you want to tell your story in a way that isn't just a sentence, but you kind of want to elaborate on it a little bit. So then you want to think about using a formula like this: trigger incident, dilemma, goal, thematic question, obstacles, stakes, attainment of goal. So you want, that should not have been written there. That's my bad. So the goal at the end is, so everything you're going through in your journey is the idea of you're moving toward a goal. So you want to start to think about how to craft the stories you tell in real life in this type of framework as well. And you'll be shocked at how enthralled the audience will be, that it's not just you're rambling to get to a point. You have something very clear that you want to say, and you have it well thought out, and you put it into this. Okay, so development season. Development season is July through October for the networks. So it's July through October. That's when the networks hear pitches. October through November, outlines are due. December, scripts are due. January, February, scripts are picked up for pilots to be made. March and April is when the pilot shoots. And May is the series pickup. So this is really like how the circular year works, like in your mind. So, for example, when I do my StoryWise teleseminar, my whole strategy is that you're going to have a TV spec and TV pilot done in time for the writing programs, in time for staffing season, and that you're gonna have the pilot done in time for development season. So, again, we've got July through October pitches, October through November outlines due for the writers who sell scripts. December, scripts due. January, February pickup. March, April shooting of the pilots. And May is the series pickups.
Hold on.
Okay. I know. I have, this is a sticky list. What? Put it what? Okay, oh, I will. There. Okay, so, in the, yes, oh yes, and I have most of the information is in the workbook that will be available after class in the TV writing toolkit, but it's there too, so you have it. Development tips, borrow from your life, be prolific, write something they can't ignore, clear concept, strong narrative, give broad strokes. So I would say the one thing that kills people when they're giving pitches is you start rambling. Has anybody ever done that? Yeah, so it's really giving broad strokes. You don't need to give them every single detail. You need to give them the framework so they understand what is in your story. Lay out the series engine, and I'll pull this over there. Passion for concept, confidence with pitch. So when you go into your development meeting, your biggest thing that's going to sell your idea is your passion for it. You go, and I'm telling you guys, I cannot tell you how many people have gone into a meeting total monotone. Okay, that for me is like, no. Like, you have to excite me. So even if you have the most horrendous day in the world, you put a mask on when you go into that office. And you act out what you're excited about. And you really come alive, because this is your opportunity to sell your idea. And if you're not excited about your idea, then no one else is going to be. So tell a personal story about the inspiration. Think of your pitch in terms of line, paragraph, page. I once met with a writing team, and God love them, and they have soul pilots, but they wrote up a pitch that was like 29 pages. And I was like, wow, okay, we're going to cut that down to 5 minutes. We're going to cut that down to 7 minutes. Like, these are the things that you do not need in that meeting. So if you think in terms of really what you have to be ready for in these pitches is really mostly what you're going to give is your logline and a paragraph, meaning going further into it, like 1 or 2 paragraphs. The page, you have it prepared in your mind, your page pitch, so you're able to answer questions. If anybody has a question about your pitch, know the balance of your story. So I think another very common mistake in the pilot writing process is that writers have too much character and not enough plot, or too much plot and not enough character. So it is a challenge to figure out, but television is character driven. So really keep that in mind in your pitch as well. Take us into a world we don't know. If we do know the world, sell it with a new angle. Utilize your voice. Empathy for the central character. I can't send that home enough. Have a powerful dilemma stemming into a clear goal. So I'm going to tell you where I came up with my philosophy on story. When I knew that I was going to be writing a storyline, I knew that I had to do something that was going to differentiate my voice.
Did you raise it higher?
Higher?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did everybody get development season? Okay. And so what I did was I recognized in writing storylines that I had to come up with what was my brand and my voice. So I thought, okay, I've been an analyst at that time for 17 years. So I got a bunch of Emmy nominated, Oscar nominated, Golden Globe nominated scripts, and I extracted a formula. And the formula that I extracted is everything I teach from, because I didn't just want to teach people how to write a good script, because a good script is not going to get you hired. I wanted to teach people how to write a great script. So, so the idea of the trigger incident, the dilemma, the stemming into the external goal for the A story, and then every obstacle, escalating obstacle, all is lost moment needs to connect to your goal. Your voice, what makes you a writer, and covering the idea of what jobs you've had. But more in the style of writing, so that they can see how you tell a story. Representation certainly is a huge part. I know it has become so difficult to get agents, and I know that. I have countless writers that I have seen the challenge, and it, you know, the only answer to it, I say, is really, again, create your own career, and they'll come running when the jobs start coming. And the one thing you can't control is your writing. So if your writing is there, then the jobs will come. And it's also your relationships. So it's really learning to be out there all the time, even when you don't want to make relationships. And you'll find that you'll have a really good time. I've had so many people come up to me, and I'm so grateful for this, so thank you. And talk about the posts on my Facebook page, and talk about how Friday night drinks makes them feel so much less isolated and so much more connected. I have an event called Friday Night Drinks. It's the first Friday of every month that I do with Scriptwriters Network. You can go on my website under events and seminars and look for that. I highly encourage the experience. People come by themselves. It becomes like a cheers group. We could have anywhere from 75 to 200 people. I've done it for 7 years. It really was it started with the idea of TV and feature writers learning to meet one another, because the two worlds were starting to intertwine, and it has grown into so much more. It's really the idea of anybody who needs to network. Okay. I'm also going to have, so if you look in my brochure and see any of the one-on-one consults that I offer, on Monday, I'm going to have a one-day special only for this room. So if you email me on Monday and say, Jen, I want the sheet of special offers. I was at the Great American Pitch Fest. There's going to be big discounts, and and you'll have one day. So that is, and with the brochure you get 10% off. So you're already going to get 10% off by saying you were here and you have the brochure. Okay, so I said in closing, but let me go. I did give pitching tips, one last thing before we close. So pitching, I want you to think about this when you pitch tomorrow. These are points. I want you to think about what inspired your idea. I want you to announce what the genre is. If it's a feature, of course, you go and do a drama, comedy, this or that. Same with TV. This is a half-hour comedy that is a single cam versus a multi-cam. This is a 1 hour drama that is blah, blah, blah. Then you don't have people trying to catch up with you. They already know what your show is. So you're doing them a favor, like you're telling them where you're going. When you give the logline, I don't recommend saying this is my logline. I recommend saying this is what my story's about, and give your logline. Characters, I would not recommend pitching more than 3 characters. People go to sleep during the characters. So you want 1, 2, 3 characters, like 2 sentences for each of them, and give a strong sense in those 2 sentences. Then tell the story of your opening, or tell the story of your climax. think about what moment is more interesting and going to bring them in more. Bless you. Your climax might help set up your series. Your opening very often helps set up your series. It's all about your ability to tell your story. So again, it's looking at, and that's what I'm saying. I think it becomes daunting if you're like, oh my God, I got to tell the story of my whole script. Don't think in terms of that. Tell a moment in your story. But it is a moment that's going to draw them in and make them want more. So you want to think in terms of that. Themes, and then closing. Always think about, with your closing, you want to think about the idea of why you think now is a great time in the market for you to write this particular show. And you want to end on passion. So think about the passion that you had in the opening and hit it again in the end, because that's going to be their last impression of you. And you are going to do great. So yeah, I told you about the raffle. And then in closing, all about you. You make your career happen. You are the protagonist in your story. Make it a good one.